So hello everybody. So I think it will be another talk which is not about talking about synchrotron. So it's ITER. I don't know how many of you here knows about ITER. Okay, so this is a list of different people who contribute, who are working actually on this part. So we have collaboration with CIEMAT and Indra in Spain and Culam in UK. So ITER, I forgot one thing. ITER is located in south of France, close to Marseille or Aix-en-Provence. We are not very far from Cadarache-Sillé. So for people who don't. So there are 7 ITER members who contribute to this project. China, EU, India, Japan, Russia, South Korea, and United States. And they are making cash and in-kind contribution to the ITER project. So what is it about? So actually, this is fusion. So what we try to demonstrate actually is that we can generate electricity out of fusion energy. So the idea here, you have a deuterium tritium particle which collide, and then out of it you get this helium, so that you can have a sustainable reaction, and then you have this neutron which goes to the blanket, and the idea is to get the heat to be able to use it and to convert it later to energy. And the goal is so this is to get an idea about the tokamak. So this is the vacuum vessel here, and the weight is roughly 8,000 tons. Then you have the TF coil. This is a big big magnet. This is this weight. The central solenoid, another magnet. And in total, you have roughly 23,000 tons, which is roughly 3.5 the Eiffel Tower weight. Then here, the radius is 6 meters. And then the goal is to have a plasma current, which is roughly 15 megaamps. And the magnetic field will be 5.3 Tesla. And what ITER needs to demonstrate is the possibility to produce a fusion power of 500 megawatt. This is a minimum for a power plant, and with a Q greater or equal to 10 for 500 seconds. That's the goal. Q is this is the formula. I don't know the word in English. Rendement. This is the power fusion over the power you inject. Is your I don't know the word. Efficiency. Voilà, thank you. Yeah, sorry. So this is a workstat map. So actually, the machine will be located here. So you have this big circular of concrete wall. It's because we are an INB, so it's a nuclear building, so we have to comply with the nuclear rule. And this is actually the assembly hall. So the different components will be here. Then there will be a huge crane which will lift up the components and put them like that. Then you have different buildings. So this is a 400 kV switchyard. So since the beginning of the year, we are directly connected to the grid. And then you have this is a cryo plant. So this, I think it will be the biggest cryo plant in the world. I think we have like, a lot of helium. I think 26,000 tons or something like that. And we have the PF coil. So this is to wound up the PF coil. I will show a picture afterwards. Then you have the cryostat workshop. This is where the cryostat is assembled. So the cryostat is this one before. The big thing. This is this one. Then you have here the cooling water system, and here this is the heating system. So this is just to show you some pictures. So you see that different pieces are being built in different parts of the world. And this is, for instance, this is a vacuum vessel. So this is what will be in contact, what will be seen by the plasma. So you want really that the plasma doesn't get too close to this, because otherwise it will. This is a TF coil. So you can see you have here a human. You have You can see how big is it compared to the human people. This is a PF coil, so this is what I was saying. So so there will be 6 PF coil. 2 of them will be one manufactured by China and one by Russia. This is a 2 smaller. So if we go back, so actually, well, you don't see it here, but basically you have PF coil like that. It's circular, and then you have 6. So the 2 small here and here, they will be manufactured, and the other one, because they are too big, they are actually on site, on the PF coil building. And then you have the cryostat, and this is in this 3D for the central solenoid. So this is our schedule. So we go for a stage approach. So we aim at having a first plasma in 2025. It will be mainly to validate the engineering operation. So, and after, what we will do is start to put more system in place, like the diverter, some diagnostic, and heating. So this is PF prefusion power phase 1. And then in prefusion power 2, we are going to add the neutral beam. And finally, the goal is to have the fusion power. Each time we are going, so here we start with 100 kiloampere, and I think 2 Tesla. And after, we increase the plasma current until to reach the 50. 15. So this is what we have presented, just the ITER project in general. Now we are going to focus more on the control system. So this is actually our current architecture. So here you have the different subsystems. So it could be one diagnostic, one heating system. We roughly expect to have 200 of them. And each of these systems consists of acquisition. So we have slow acquisition and fast acquisition. And depending on what you want to do with the data, we have different type of network. So we have our control commands. The conventional control is based on PON. This is the plant operation network. Then you have the timing network. So that's why you find it in most of the acquisition devices. Then you have DAN, which is actually our data acquisition network. And then you have another one, which is the SDN, and this is used for plasma control. This is a real-time feedback control big machine. This is very important, and it's going to actually make real-time control of the. So the main parameter we have is it gives you an idea about the size of our system. So just to, in this context, I think the number of computers for PON we expect is 1,000. For the engineering archiving rate, we expect in average 25 megabytes with a peak 50 megabytes per second. So we expect to have 2.2 terabytes per day for engineering. Then for the scientific archive, we will start slowly, 2 gigabytes per second, and with the phased approach, we will go up to 50 gigabytes. It's mainly the camera data, which at the end we are going to produce 2 petabytes per day. But again, this is really on the long run. I think at the beginning we are going to start with this number, 90 terabytes. This is the accuracy of our network, timing network. And for SDN, we expect to have 25 megabytes per second. So actually, we have different type of source for the raw data. So EPICS, this is, yes, for the PON data, we are using EPICS. So it's really for conventional control and monitoring. Our Mimics alarm system and logbooks are all based on this. And we have 2 backends, a relational database and HDFI file. We also have an archiver for the SDN data. Here it's what we call multicast topic. And the maximum rate we expect is 10 kilohertz. And this is in-house implementation. So we develop the protocol and the library. And it's also stored in HDFI file. And for DAN, we also store in HDFI files. And it's in-house implementation. So basically, we are actually doing streaming of the data, and we are writing. We have archiver to store the different data while we are doing the acquisition. This is actually the production we expect. For first plasma, we expect maximum 1 petabyte. Then for the other phase, it will be between 10 and 100 because the phase it's per year. And then for the other phase, you see we start to increase. And all the data need to be kept forever for the lifetime of the project, because after we need to distribute. Yeah, this is another. We need to distribute the data to the other member and all that. So you know the political aspect of the project. So we are using HDF5 file. So why HDF? Because it's a powerful self-described data, and also for data preservation, because I think it's like NASA, we need to be sure that we are going to be able to read the data even after 30 years. What we are using currently, we are a heavy user of single writer, multiple reader. We are using the 1.10.3 version. We are using the low-level C API, plus from time to time we are using also the H5Py for test script and some plotting tool. Our environment is mainly Linux, so we have to support Red Hat 6.5, it's our version, 7.4, 7.6, and also we can run even, it's not officially supported, but we also did some trial on CentOS. What we did, and I will explain in the next slide, is we have different data layout, HDF5 layout, depending on the data source. And why we are doing that is because we have a requirement. Our users, they want to be able to correlate the data from the different sources. So it's very important for them to be able to plot within the same GUI, okay, DAN data, SDN data, PON data. So the PON layout, so basically it's essentially time series, and it's always on. So it's always on. And the maximum is 10 Hertz. So the main challenge here is we have many dataset groups in one file. And in our code, we limit to 100K dataset in one file. So what we use is a compound data type. It is static in our case, and the structure is known in advance. And we store the values, the timestamp, and some alarm information. It's part of the EPIX package. And we also implement a file rotation mechanism so that it can support this, because we didn't want to have a very big file because of maintenance, backup, and all that. It was not very convenient for our system admin. The main issue we had is actually the first time we tried to do that, we had an issue with the memory because, of course, by dataset, whenever you create a dataset, you have some memory cache associated. So we discussed with the HDF support because we also need to learn HDF5, so it was and they explained us that we have to disable the cache. So, and this is what we did. And then the memory consumption went down, and it was much better. So the writing performance was okay because the data rate was slow. And here, because this is PON data, you need to be able to read the data. So actually, we are doing flush almost every second, so that people can actually see the data rather quickly. And we use attribute for static metadata, such data type and unit, and this we associated with the group per variable. Regarding the SDN layout, it's more or less the same. It's also time series, but it will be mainly on during plasma experiments and during the commissioning phase because they want to test their system. But it's not necessarily on always. But we have also implementing the file rotation. And here we use the data set consists mainly of, so we have a few data sets in one file, usually one data set per SDN topic. And here we use a lot compound data type because the structure is different from one topic to another. And we start to receive requests for nested structure. So we need to see if it's really the best way to do that. And the size of structure can be rather big. I think the maximum is 64K. And the sampling rate is rather higher. And here again, they want to see, so while we are writing the data, they want to start to be able to read. So here also, we are flushing the data every second so that people can view the... regarding the Dan layout, it's a little bit different because actually the layout is optimized for writing, and it was based on a discussion with the HDF group. So what we have is 2 data sets, one for the block header and one for the payload. And here the buffer is multiplexed per channel, so also the channel, and we also support component type. So you can have, but the type has to be the same. So it's n time either an atomic type or n time the same structure. We use for the moment the same layout for images. And for the moment, what we found out is mainly the performance limitation is mainly due to the disk speed. So what we did is a very basic test with one stream at 800 megabytes. So it was actually trying to fill up the 10 gigabit link for 1 hour without loss. What we had as an issue is really when the storage was full, we noticed that from time to time we get some 0 being written at the end of the file. So it was not, so we had to do some special trick here, and also to inform that the file was not being used. But I think most of them will be solved by the next generation of a single writer, multiple reader. So after, you need to be able to access. So our physicists and our user in general, they don't want to deal with file. They always ask us, we need an API, and we don't want to have the file. So, so what we need to provide to them is a data access, a server, which allows them actually to access Dan, SDN, and PON without knowing what is the layout and actually what is the storage. They shouldn't know actually if it's HDF5 or a database or whatever. So in some cases, what we did as an exercise is, so we have a lot of demand on interactive zooming. So people start to plot data. I will show some screenshots. And they start to do interactive zooming because we have a large time span. It can be 1 year or a lot of data. So for instance, if you have channel where you do an acquisition at 100 megabytes per second for 2 hours, you start to, if you try to browse it, it's quite, so what we do is we pre-compute the mean, the max, and the average in a file, so that actually already it's like in Google Maps. If you want to have several resolutions of your data to speed up your access. So basically, this is what we are doing here, and it's based on a modular solution. So it's plugin based, and we use C and C++. And basically, our data access is based on 2 patterns. Either you give a time range, so you have a variable and you say, okay, I want the time, give me the value between time 1 and time 2, or given a short number. And the short number actually is mapped to a time range also. And we have different data types. It can be a scalar value, a structure, so profile. So typically a profile is a 2D array, but then you have to move, you have, it's moved with the time. So you have also a time vector and image and video. And also what they want to do is to be able to access the metadata at a given point of time. So we provide API for that. And what we, and I think it was reported already by Diamond, we also found some performance issue with the HyperSlab. So we had to find a workaround. We reported the issue to the HDF group, and we are working on improving. So the HyperSlab we are using a lot for the decimation when you want to, you have a regular stride. So this is what we're trying to do. And it doesn't perform well actually when you have a very big file. So this is the data access architecture. So here you have the different files. So this is the Dan file. It has its own layout, SDN and HDF5, and we also support the relational database. We are implementing a plugin, what we call, if you want, it would be a C++ class. And then you have the UDAS server, which actually will serve the different client requests. And we support C++, Python, Java, and MATLAB. And here what is important is we have a database, 2 databases, one which will index the file. So for basically in our file system, we say, okay, we have a new file, and then we start to index some information so that actually we can know. So when they ask for a variable and the time range, we know which file to look at and which file need to be open. And then we have another database, which is a Pulse database, which actually is more for metadata. So this is some screenshots. So this is a MATLAB Windows UDA interface. So this is actually real data from our electrical system, the 400 kV station. So this is 4 months, and this is they have started in 1 year and it's 100 gigabytes, so it's not a lot. But this is a Python interface, and we also have a C++ Qt-based tool to actually plot the data. This is for images, so this is the same tool which can actually you have an image, you can play it, you can extract, you can select, you have a region of reference, extract, and display the time traces. And then also make some correlation with other. So we had, I think, a good progress on this topic. Of course, we are waiting for the first diagnostic to make more tests, especially the image for first plasma. We are going to have 1 or 2 cameras for the visible IR. So we are going to see, I think we often hear about this direct chunk. So let's see if there is a use case for us here. We did a lot of, and it's also still ongoing. My micro.
You had microphone. Cutting the mic when you were up.
Well, I didn't do it on purpose.
No, I think I have to change the battery. Take a hand mic. Yeah.
Okay.
This is getting the interesting part.
Okay. It's my last slide. So yes, I was saying scalability test for UDA is ongoing. So we are trying to see if our architecture will scale with thousands of users. Usually, I think we are quite satisfied with a single writer, multiple writer. We have to thank the HDF group for their good support. And what we would like to do is to evaluate the object store and also to integrate better with our physics workflow. And then I have a more general question is how the scientific community sees the cloud and the object storage in general.
You're preparing the next talk.
Yes, voilà. Well, I didn't know that the next talk actually will
be
about.
Thank you so much, Lena. Any questions for Lena?
Yeah. Yes, I have a question about your data storage. You said, I think on the slide, you want to have the factor of 10 for 300 to 500 seconds, yeah?
Yes.
You are done, and there's no point to store data.
Sorry, you are talking.
Yeah,
Which slide?
300 to 500 seconds.
The objective. Yes, this one.
Yes,
Yes.
This is the whole show, yeah?
Sorry?
I mean, this 300 to 500 seconds, this is the time when things happen that need to be recorded, yes?
Not necessarily. We need to record before, actually. It's not only this period. So we have all the... No, it's before also. We have all the energization of the magnetic and all that. No, it starts before. What I mean here is we need to keep the plasma for this time.
Any other questions? Yes, John.
I was curious for Simmer, what kind of data write throughput are you seeing now? Is this like one computer writing local disk or one computer writing to remote disk? Because I think you had a target of 200 megabyte per second.
So for the first plasma, I think the most, so we have a requirement from the magnetic diagnostic, which actually they want to test for aggregated rate for 30 gigabytes per second. And it will consist of 3,000 sensors. Each sensor is, I think, 2 megabytes per second. So this is what they want to challenge. So what we are going to do is we need to make sure that we need to size the number of fast controller and the number of archiver so that we can sustain this rate. And that,
it's an aggregated.
Yes, the 30 gigabyte is an aggregated rate. And of course, as they need to access, so we would prefer to go for a shared file system because otherwise it will be a little bit problematic when we are going to try to access the data. We have some solution, but of course it's a little bit slower and we'll see.
Thank you.